Hi, everyone. I'm Josephine from ISA, and I thank you for attending today's presentation, What Does UDL Mean for Me? So what does UDL mean, and what does it mean for you and your role? We have Lauren Tucker with us here from Southern Connecticut State University, who's going to provide us with a brief foundation on the universal design for learning and specific examples and applications throughout the university campus. Lauren will also touch on strategies and technology that will be shared to increase access to learning, resources, and information for all students. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lauren now. And feel free throughout the presentation as well to, to ask questions if you have any questions throughout the presentation. Okay.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. So as Josephine mentioned, please feel free you can either use the chat feature or the Q&A, but I'm so excited to share with you what does UDL mean for me and some kind of general foundation supports, and then some specific tips and strategies for you to take back into your practice. There on the screen, you can see that there is a QR code, so you can scan the QR code to access the presentation. I'm also going to put a link in the chat so that you can access the presentation as well. There are links to resources and instructional videos, so please feel free to then save this if this is helpful for you in your practice and within your role. So from my lens, just to kind of give my context, I am a professor in the special education department. My background was in special education as a teacher. And so that's where I'm really looking at universal design and supporting all learners within our classroom and every member of our community. So here are the session goals for today. I want to start off with really just kind of looking at those essential components of universal design for learning. What is this all about, and what does it mean for different aspects of a college campus? Then I want to transition into an implementation framework, because it can be very overwhelming to think about all of the different aspects of universal design for learning. So I'm going to describe this concept of +1 to really think about how can we take one step forward towards increasing proactive accessibility. Within this space, I also just want to highlight how many different populations and different aspects of individuals benefit from universally designed content. And then finally, my final section is going to be looking at specific tools and strategies aligned with each of the universal design components. My goal for everyone today is for you to be able to take back at least one tool or strategy to integrate within your role or your practice. So universal design for learning, and although learning is embedded within the name, it really is not just for learning. It truly is a proactive approach to sharing content and sharing information. And what I also really want to highlight, although my background is in special ed, it's not just for accessibility, and using the UDL framework and having that mindset can truly help improve the inclusivity and equity for everyone who is engaging with your content, not just individuals with disabilities. And so the three main components of universal design for learning are multiple means of representation. So how we are sharing content, whether it's a flyer, a video, reading a passage, reading an article, a presentation. So that means multiple means of representation is how we're sharing content. The expression is how someone is sharing their learning or responding. So how someone is responding to a call for proposals or responding to a survey or a registration form, how people are then responding. And finally is the engagement. So this is how motivated people are. I will share throughout this presentation that this is consistently always the area that I feel like I can constantly utilize feedback and growth in. I teach undergraduate and graduate students, and there's so many competing priorities. And so I'm really thinking of how do I maximize my student engagement so that they are learning to the best of their ability. And I'm really kind of out out hitting every other priority that they have because they're so motivated to learn my content. And this one I find is the most challenging. Even if another role's on campus and kind of getting individuals to sign up for events, motivated to attend office hours or kind of open panels. And so I'll have some tips and strategies for that today as well. So those are the three main components of universal design for learning. And I love, so many major companies now are really pushing towards inclusive design and inclusive technology design. And I love this infographic from Microsoft. They had an accessibility summit this spring, and it was from there. And what I love about this infographic, so on my screen right now, I am sharing, there's an image, and there's three columns, and in the columns it says permanent, temporary, and situational. And then there's 4 rows, and in those rows there's touch, see, hear, and speak. And what this demonstrates is that providing accessible content not only supports an individual with a permanent disability. So for example, if I have an opportunity for you to alternatively access a touchscreen computer, it's not just important for someone with one arm, but it also could be helpful for someone who does have an arm injury or a new parent who is holding a baby and trying to juggle a lot of things. Same thing if I provide multiple options to see content, whether you read it or listen to it, that can help someone who is blind. It can also support someone with a cataract or support someone who is a distracted driver to avoid them reading the content. And so I really feel like this infographic does a great job of demonstrating how powerful universal design for learning of the approach can be for so many different populations of people. So really moving away from it is just focused for individuals with disability. So many people can benefit from utilizing these approaches and these tips and strategies. So this is kind of like my hook to get everyone into universal design for learning. And now it can seem a little bit overwhelming, like, oh man, we produce a lot of flyers in my center, or we produce a lot of emails. How do we make sure they're all accessible? And so the framework that I had shared previously is this concept of +1. So Tom Tobin kind of earmarked this in his higher education universal design for learning book, but really looking at just take one step forward, pick one area where you can increase the accessibility, add in a universal design tool or strategy, and just continually build from there. And I find that that approach, even with my work and my practice, has really helped me to take it one piece at a time, and then I'm building. And now, as I'm continually building here, I've got some more accessible content because I've started from little pieces. And so as I'm sharing lots of tools and resources today, I'm going to encourage you to think about one thing, one tool, one strategy that you can utilize within your practice, maybe tomorrow or in the near future. Because I do believe, especially as we're kind of promoting professional development and growth, that we have something tangible that we can walk away with and implement immediately. I think that's the teacher in me. I'm always looking for like, okay, what can I use now to help me? And so I'm hoping that I give you at least one, if not multiple. So that's that +1. So if there is a moment where you're feeling like, whew, that's a lot, think about the +1 framework and just pick one area to work on first and build from there. So one step forward. So the first area that I want to start on is looking at accessible content. And this I feel like is, as an instructor, as a college staff member, if you're running a center, this is really the bulk of a lot of the information that you are creating and that you're disseminating to the college campus. And so I have this kind of broken down as kind of what can faculty use, what can some staff use, and then what can everyone use. And a lot of these practices are really just, you kind of not set it and forget it, but if you continually have the options and review them, it does become second nature. So the first thing I wanted to share is as a faculty member. So at the beginning of all of my classes, I have this learner accessibility option document, and it is linked within here. So you can please feel free to utilize this. So I have a learner options for access, and I post this on my learning management system. And I go through this on kind of the day that I go through my syllabus. So I can really kind of reiterate to my students is I want you to learn. How you learn and how you engage with the content should match what works best for you. So really I focus on, okay, is text to speech beneficial for you? I use the major platforms here, and I provide kind of resources and information for individuals to then engage with content in the best way possible. So I talk about using speech to text, Windows dictation. It's not too overwhelming, but I pick some very specific built-in supports for my students to utilize. I tend to utilize a lot of assistive technology supports, so I also will name it and talk about it as I'm teaching, and as I'm just working, I might use text to speech, so I can listen to text, or speech to text, so I'm dictating to the computer. And so really giving kind of opening that space of however you're engaging with content within this class is accepted, is welcomed, and kind of opening that door to providing options and choice. So that's my first piece for a faculty member. The second piece here is looking at if you're a staff member. So how then can you pair and increase the multiple means of representation? So can you have a flyer, but can you also maybe have an audio link to that? So maybe you have a QR code on your flyer that then reads the flyer out loud. And when you think about engagement, which we'll talk about next, that could be really highly motivating on a college campus. Like, hey, scan this QR code and listen to our director describe the event. So really thinking about, can you pair audio if you're sending it in an email? Can you increase the accessibility or how people can engage with that content? Many of our documents are PDFs, portable documents, and they are very inaccessible oftentimes. So I wanted to share kind of when it's inaccessible, being able to highlight and copy and paste from it is generally not an option. For someone who is blind or with a visual impairment, if they are using a screen reader, so if a computer is reading all of the documents, they then have nothing to listen to on a PDF, which is one of the reasons why it can be very challenging. But also for someone who might want to listen to it, they also cannot access it. So I wanted to share a workaround that is free if you do encounter a PDF. And so I do also find I have a PDF that I'm sharing on my screen right now that was created from a copy machine. So it is an inaccessible, it's just a picture of not a high quality document. And this can often be found for some research articles, some seminal works that have been scanned into the library that might be inaccessible for some individuals. And so this tip is one of the best. I'm on Google Docs right now. So that is one thing that in order for this tip to work, you do need to utilize Google Drive, which is a free cloud-based storage. So I have this PDF open here. And when I click down with the arrow, I have an option to open with Google Docs. When I choose that option, what it does is it actually does something called optical character recognition, or OCR, and it takes the picture of the text, then it converts it to actual text. So this is the actual picture that I uploaded. And when I scroll down, you can see here that now I actually have text that I can manipulate, I can change, I can increase the size, I can copy and paste it, but I can also listen to it. And that's something that can be extremely powerful for many individuals, or if I just want to copy and paste the information as I'm working on my project. It is not perfect. You can see that some of the words aren't fabulous. So it only works with a higher quality document. but it's a great start. Again, if you're providing content on your website, maybe you provide a PDF version and a Microsoft Word version so that some individuals can engage with the content in a variety of different ways and it meets their needs. So that is this open with Google Docs option. And the other thing that I love for many smartphones now, there is the built-in feature for picture to text. So on a smartphone, I have an Apple device right now, but on the Apple device, if I take a picture of any text, a flyer, anything, it does something called live text and it converts the picture to text. So I can copy and paste it, or I can listen to it if I want to. But what it also does is it allows me to search pictures. I don't know about any of you, but I tend to take pictures of slides at conferences, flyers, things I don't want to forget. And then they're just in my camera roll. And I'm like, I know, I knew about that event. Like, where was it? Many of our smartphones now, you can search for a keyword that you knew was in the presentation or in the flyer, and then it will pull up and it will actually analyze the words within the pictures. 10 years ago, this technology was quite expensive, and now it's built into many of our smartphones and those community members within our college campus. And so sometimes it's just prompting them to be like, hey, take a picture of that flyer. And remember, now you can save our center contact number right there. So that's one thing that's nice too. If there's a phone number or contact information, your smartphone will be like, do you want to save that contact? And you say yes. And then it easily integrates right there. So these are tiny kind of shifts in how we're sharing content with the community that removes barriers for some individuals who need accessible content, but then also can improve the experience and equitable access for everyone else. And then everyone, as we are on here, it makes my heart very happy that Zoom transitioned so that you can request captions on your Zoom meeting, so you don't need to have the host do that anymore. But I tend to just, whenever I'm presenting, I enable the captions either in Teams or in Zoom so that it can be utilized for everyone. I like having presentations with captions. It really helps me for my concentration and for my focus. But I also honor that for some individuals, it can be distracting. So one of the reasons why I do love in the kind of virtual learning platforms is that it allows each individual to choose whether or not they want closed captions. For anyone who is utilizing Google Slides, what I do like about Google Slides is there is an option built in, same thing with Microsoft PowerPoint Online, where I can also toggle and have captions on my presentation. One of the things that I don't like about this is that it can't be customized per people. So if one person in my presentation is very distracted by the closed captions, there's kind of no option to disable it because I'm the presenter and I'm sharing it. So, but it can really increase the ability for everyone to engage meaningfully with my content. I'm going to turn those off because we have them available on Zoom. So those are kind of 3 examples of using multiple means of representation to increase access to your content. The other portion that I want to talk about, and this is again more traditionally looking at accessibility, but alternative tags. Alternative tags are when you add a description to a picture. And this is, really existing for individuals who are blind or with visual impairments, utilizing a screen reader. However, if you do have students or members of your community or faculty or employees who are accessing their email on their phone, generally they have a preview message option on the phone. And so what I have here is on my phone, I took screenshots of 2 emails. One email was from my university with a picture as the header which, as we know, for marketing purposes, pictures are really helpful, but can also be a hindrance sometimes if they aren't accessible. So many emails start with a banner and then continue on with the text. So on my screen here, I have a visual of an email from my university that says no alternative text. And so it's talking about our spring open house. And it says in brackets, blue and white logo description automatically generated with low confidence, taking up the majority of my preview message. And then it says good afternoon. So what that tells me is that they did not add appropriate alternative text because it was our university's logo. Or what they could do is label it as decorative so it doesn't take up space and have the preview message. So if you're copying and pasting images into emails, someone might get like image 3754 and it might cover up everything. And then they might not open your email because they're like, what is that? So to show you an example, I have another email at the bottom that I sent out to my class where I did put a picture at the beginning. However, I added an alt text. So the alt text is girl using eye gaze. And then it says, hello, everyone. We have class tonight at 5, blah, 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 blah. They're able to see my message. So although alternative text is vital for individuals who are blind using screen readers, it can benefit so many other people and truly help your email communication and your outward facing messaging. So many people access email via their phone. And so if you are putting pictures at the beginning of your email that aren't appropriately tagged, you're missing some of this tiny little messaging, right? Those grabs, because this automatic description is taking up that space. And so really thinking about how can we then utilize UDL to improve communications across the board. So this is just a really nice example of how important alt text is. So now I'm going to transition. So that was multiple means of representation, shows sharing information. And now I'm going to look at multiple means of engagement. And on my title of my slide, I also have minimizing threats and promoting expectations. The Universal Design for Learning Guidelines has broken up the 3 major components into subtopics. So there are many subtopics available. So I've kind of just pulled out some, but I find especially with our student population and our campus-wide populations at this point in time, minimizing threats and promoting expectations is crucial. With the kind of emergence of AI supports and students exploring with technology, having us be clear on expectations is crucial, but then also minimizing threats so that our students can access our centers and can access the supports that are available on campus. So I know for me, what I've really set that has been really helpful is having a clear routine and expectations from day one. So I do have, and I will link to some of the moments in my syllabus that I add to then just have those clear expectations for my students, especially in online classes, but starting off right away, even when we're looking at your office, your department, or within your course, having those clear expectations for members of the community can be so helpful. Having accessible flyers and emails and information, as I mentioned on the last side, can really help minimize threats for some students who might really not be able to access what you're sharing. So it can help students to manage information. Right now, I have found that there are many individuals on our campus who are having a difficult time balancing kind of priorities, life, and really kind of struggling within that, getting everything done. And so for me as an instructor or working within a department and a center, how do I then make sure that I can enhance my students' ability to manage this information so that their cognitive load is focused in the right place? I want them to focus on what am I learning? What's the critical thinking? What's my problem solving versus like, where do I sign up for that room? And I feel like that's where many of my students and individuals on our campus are getting stuck in this managing of information and running into barriers when I really want them to be focusing all of their cognitive energy on learning something. And so that's really where I focus a lot in this aspect of multiple means of engagement. I have many individuals have office hours virtually. I have found that moving my office hours virtually, I have more students attending my office hours, which is exciting. But really trying to work on different ways for students to feel comfortable and developing a community. And so I have examples on my screen. I will have two examples of so this is Susan's Snack and Share on my screen. So it talks about office hours with a manager of diversity and inclusion. And it really gives students a direction as to well, what is this for? So you can schedule a snack and share. So it says a one-to-one, which is a quick share. So you can introduce yourself, share ideas, and learn how to get involved with the office's efforts. You could do a group topic, which is a 1 hour long. And so it gives students very specific expectations and paths in which they can engage with the center. And I do believe that many of our students or individuals on campus who might be first generation college students or just might have some difficulty navigating what does this center do? Giving a path and opening up to say, here are some options. Here's what we can talk about. Here's the time. Here's what to expect can be so powerful. And so kind of thinking about rearranging the concept of office hours for centers or for professors can really increase access for so many of our students and individuals who might not be taking advantage of that time because they aren't sure what to do with it or where to go. So this is an example from a center, and this is a link as well. So this will go to where I got this. This is not from me. And then this is an example on my screen here for office hours. So this says office hours, it says the type. So it does break down the structure, the location, when and what it's best for. And again, I love this option of what it's best for because it guides students. It can minimize a threat of well, what am I going to say when I go to my professor? Or is it virtual? Is it in person? Reducing some anxiety for some of our students. And really just providing that opportunity of, we can just hang out and I'll bring snacks. And so I love kind of this rebranding or reframing how we are supporting individuals within our community to engage with either faculty or centers. And so this is a true UDL approach because it is minimizing threats. It's giving students exactly kind of what to expect, reducing some anxiety, some frustration, and really just being transparent. And so I love these examples. And I found too, giving my students specific examples and times around we're going to have office hours or I'm going to have office hours at this time, focusing on this assignment. Drop in to share, ask questions. And I have found that giving kind of more specific direction, I have more students coming to me who might not have come to me previously because they were a little bit worried or anxious about what to expect. And so I love these concepts. All right, so now transitioning and continuing to think about multiple means of engagement and reducing threats and minimizing distractions, thinking about universal design and information design. So how are we displaying information? This can come in lots of different spaces. So that's why I have my MMRs, multiple means of representation. So thinking about ways we're sharing information. What vocabulary are we using on our flyers or within our courses to ensure that our students understand expectations? Maximizing transfer and generalization of information. I think also this is something that can be a struggle across a college campus and thinking about what can we do? Can I access this support here? And then, like I said, minimizing threats and distractions. And so what I've really been passionate about is thinking about how we design information and design courses to kind of meet some of these goals. So why does it matter? So what I want to share with you is I've got I've got a study in progress, so this is still going. But I have a study. So right now my population is 64, and I have 35 survey responses, and they are in between undergraduate students and graduate students. And what I wanted to find out is, when I am intentionally designing content for my students to access within an online environment, what impact does it have? So what do they see as beneficial to their learning as they continue on? So this is kind of a self-perception survey. So they are self-reporting the benefit that they interpret from the instructional design. So I want to share the components and then also share my student responses with my goal of minimizing distractions and minimizing threats. And although I'm using this embedded within a course, it also can be really powerful when we're looking at website design for centers, information design, as students are learning about how to do things. So a lot of this knowledge can also be transferred into other spaces. Oh, there's a great question in the chat. Great question in the Q&A that I would like to stop before I kind of dive into this data. Advice can you offer to educational institutions in developing countries for shifting and adapting to UDL for increased learning comfortability? Oh, beautiful questions. And so that's where I think starting off with that +1. So especially as I'm kind of presenting today, there are a lot of great low-tech strategies and low-tech support that don't require kind of a significant amount of technology to access them. So for example, providing guidelines in terms of here's this center, here's our office hours, here's what we can do, and here's what this looks like. So sometimes starting off with some of those kind of lower tech strategies, kind of like almost like the low risk, implementing, and then looking at seeing like, wow, I have more students coming and providing support and feeling more comfortable in our learning environment because we identified come at this time for learning help or come here to just get to know us and build our community. I think that kind of creating that safe space in that community is a great place to start if kind of looking at the technology is overwhelming or could take too long. And so that's what I love about universal design is that you can kind of start with just the strategies and then technology can follow afterwards. But thinking about, okay, what is a threat? Like what might be a barrier for our students feeling comfortable within this class or being successful accessing my center services? So kind of analyzing some of those barriers can then help you to say, okay, can I provide multiple ways for them to register for office hours? Yes. Maybe they can, write a note or sign up on a note sheet or send a letter. So providing any of those options where there might be barriers can really increase your learning comfortability and also then access to those learning resources. So I will hopefully have some other strategies as well, but great question where you can, again, start with the strategies because I love the term increase learning comfortability because that's what we're doing. We want to just create an inclusive society and an inclusive environment for everyone to access in an equitable way. And so when we think about the whole kind of mission of UDL, it's really just providing equity for everyone and that safe environment. Oh, great question. So I'll try and keep kind of going back to that as we look at some other strategies. So thank you so much for that. Please feel free, anyone, you can write questions in the chat or in the Q&A as well. So I'm going to deviate back to the some of the data that I've been collecting regarding student perceptions. And so what I have here is just course consistency. And so although, again, this is in an online learning management system, identifying your kind of how things are organized and set up, if students are taking multiple courses, can it be consistent, again, to reduce threats, generalize skills, and promote predictability? And for many of our students who might have some high anxiety, who might be first generation college students, this anxiety and the unknown can be very challenging and very overwhelming. So what I've done is kind of set up this very consistent rule and template. So each course is set up in a very particular way. I have this like rule of 3. So I have kind of things set up in no more than 3 sections and no more than 3 clicks. So it's going to take kind of 3 clicks to get somewhere. And so my courses are all set up in the same way. And so I just asked, and so that picture that I showed with the 3 menus set up is what was on the survey. And so I just asked students, okay, reflect on we use Blackboard as our learning management system. Reflect on the organization on the left toolbar. I used an example course, and 74% of the students who responded said that it was significantly beneficial, and 17% said it was beneficial. So I had 3 students essentially say that it was either neutral or somewhat beneficial, which again, when it comes to design, if I'm doing something that is significantly beneficial to 75% of my students, that's worth the time. And it's helping them to access my content. My next steps is when I'm looking at instructional design and communication. This is another area where I was finding that I was not burnt out, but responding to students significantly about either online assignments or confusions. And I think this is another strategy that can be utilized in a low-tech way to help that comfortable learning environment. In the field of special ed, we have something called task analysis. And what that is it's a very specific layout directional step. So kind of concrete step 1, step 2, step 3, in order to teach individuals a specific skill or a concept. I use task analysis, especially in my online courses. So I teach online synchronous. I also teach online asynchronous. But what I also find is really helpful is when students need to sign up for something or fill out an application. I use these concrete steps to minimize threats, create a more comfortable learning environment. And so students have a very clear, okay, I go here first, then here. What I tell my students is that so I use the term steps for completion. So I have my steps for completion here. And what I tell my students is that it's very much like a checklist. So I have listed for their asynchronous classes everything that they need to do. And so as they complete it, they can check it off. So it helps minimize threats, distractions, and keep everything kind of in a tight space. Especially in an asynchronous class, things can move quickly. So I tell them, this is your checklist. First, you need to watch this video. Then you complete the reflection questions and you submit them. And I find that although it's more work at the beginning, I'm not writing as many emails and responding to students asking questions. Where is this? Where do I submit it? I tell them where to submit it, under which folder. And I really highlight that, like, this is your checklist. Use this checklist. If you've completed all your steps, you're done. And this is hugely improved the amount of emails I get in terms of clarification of expectations. I will tell you that I've now been consistently using this approach, and I very rarely get questions about, like, what am I supposed to do this week? I don't understand. And it has really helped me reduce the amount of emails I'm responding to for my students. But is there another way? What I've also done, because I have found that for some students, the text is a little bit too heavy, is I have my text that I provide for my students, and then I also record a 2 to 3 minute video going through the steps and demonstrating within the course learning management system where they click and where they submit their assignments. Some learning management systems are more obvious than others. I find that mine can be a little opaque at times and can be frustrating. So showing them exactly where they go, what it should look like, and how to update makes a big difference. And so I put on my slides, so I had 25 students in this class. I posted this video and I had 30 views. I now kind of embed it within my learning management system, and I can track exactly who's watching it. So I can see that like I consistently have, 10 students watching my overview videos. It also gives me reinforcement that like, oh, I'm doing this and it's helping them, and they're watching it and it's helping them to understand and make that connection with me. So this is a great example of multiple means of representation, where they have the text, but they also have a video option as well to understand these expectations. Oh, so happy. Thank you so much for coming, Britt. Britt had to leave, but thank you. And so this is really, it takes a couple of minutes of my time, but as I mentioned, it truly does help me. And now I can track and see who's watching it. So that also gives me the reinforcement that, okay, my students are watching it, so I'm going to keep going. And then I, of course, asked them. So I've given you explicit steps and directions. What do you think? And you can, from my graph on the screen, I actually have more students who found this beneficial. So 77% of the students who responded found it significantly beneficial, 20% found it beneficial, and only 3% found it neutral. So I'm not negatively impacting anyone for these supports. And that's something that is also really important for me, is that it's not harming, but I'm really significantly helping 77% of my students. And again, when I'm looking at my time management, I'm now not writing as many emails or clarifying. So it truly is a benefit for both sides. Another piece that I had difficulty with when it comes to multiple means of engagement was the breakout room dilemma in an online class. So I was constantly like, breakout room one, I called it whack-a-mole because I was constantly going in and out of breakout groups or missing some. So what I do now, and again, this is another good UDL tip, is I use a shared document and I set expectations, I provide templates. But what I can do now is in the main meeting, I can check in and watch their work in progress and then go provide reinforcement or check in where needed. And so it allows me to see what each group is talking about, where they're going. I have evidence of their learning and their discussions. And I actually got this template from a book and I linked it on the presentation here. I'm teaching effectively with Zoom. And so this was they had a great template. And so I've kind of customized it for each of my classes, but it really helps me to promote that active learning, the engagement in breakout rooms, and giving some options and flexibility. So this is an amazing resource if you're kind of looking at managing breakout rooms, whether it's in a center. I will tell you, I now do this for some of my department meetings as well when I am hosting them and I need to do goal setting or data analysis. I use this template so I can then go back and say, okay, wait, no, we did that. Let me look and see. And so I use this approach so many different spaces within my daily life. And so I wanted to share that because again, it's clear expectations. It is a UDL approach to really be able to get exactly what your expectations are for that particular activity. My next area I'm going to transition to is also in multiple means of engagement, but it's focusing on providing choices. And coming off of a global pandemic, what is really important is that so many of our students and individuals on our campus really felt a lack of control. And I think that is continuing on as we are in the world today. And instilling student choice and providing those specific options for our learners or people individuals on campus to be empowered to make a choice can be extremely powerful and motivating within a course, within a center, within a department. And so what I really try and do is as I'm designing a class or a lesson, I think about what's one thing they're choosing. They need to make a choice. within this learning experience. And this is another strategy to create a comfortable learning environment. When we think of, okay, in this class, you're going to pick, do you want to, type this, or do you want to handwrite it? And sometimes that's my choices like that small, but I do find that they feel empowered, that they still have a choice, right? They have that say, they have that empowerment. Or I might say, okay, you can choose to watch this video or read this chapter, or, submit a drawing or submit a writing. But I really am very passionate about, within each of my courses or weeks, what are my students choosing? And they need to at least have one choice. They can have more than one, but my minimum always needs to be one. Because again, I'm working with adult learners with a lot of various backgrounds. And so sometimes I use that choice to make sure that I'm hitting on everyone's lived experiences. So whatever content they're engaging with, it matches kind of what they're coming to me with. So here again, which is interesting, it's not as high in terms of significantly beneficial, but still beneficial. So I only had one person say that it was somewhat beneficial, but 68% of the students who responded said that reflecting on choices within the course were significantly beneficial. So what I'm hoping for is that you can embed choices and think about where you can embed choices within your practice. And as I mentioned, I will often just say you can handwrite, you can type, you can audio record, you can video record your reflection, really giving my students an opportunity to choose how they're sharing their learning can be so empowering. I often never have people record audio, but I did a couple times because one student was like on the train and she recorded a voice note and got her work done. Awesome. Like, all I want you to do is engage with the content. Your method and the format in which you do it is inconsequential. And so because she had that flexibility, she was able to do her content, do her learning, and submit it, and she was able to kind of continue on no matter kind of what barriers she might have been facing. I'll do the same thing as well. I use a tool called Flip, which is a video-based tool. So if I have like a grant proposal, or we were doing like an awards application in our department, we said, okay, you can type it, or if you want to, you can respond via video. And for some of our students, that was enough of an option for them to say like, oh yeah, I'll apply for that or I'll do that, because they were just able to talk about what they were passionate about and why they qualified for the award, versus kind of sitting and writing, which can be a very challenging task for many students. So thinking about where you can provide options is crucial. In our final couple moments. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A or post them in the chat. But my last goal was to make sure that everyone had at least one tool or strategy to take back with you in your role. To help with that, I've shared a website that I've created. So this is a website of resources and templates. So you can use your smartphone if you would like, and you can scan the QR code. I'm also going to put a link to the website in the chat. But I'm just going to show you kind of what these resources are, so that you can hopefully take one of these tools or resources and implement it back, and I will have accomplished my goal for today. So my first thing here is I utilize a tool called Wakelet. Wakelet is a bookmarking tool that allows you to create categories of resources. It's one of my favorite kind of professional tools. And what I do is I embed my Wakelet within my courses as well. So this is an example of my Wakelet. It is public, so you can feel free to use it. And so I kind of have broken out, okay, if you're accessing content, these tools can help you read or watch materials from your professors. So I've listed and linked out different resources, different ways students can show their learning. So I've organized it around universal design for learning. These are primarily technology tools here because they're tech tools for my students' learning. So that's a UDL toolkit for students. This is, again, what I post. And I also have as well some UDL resources for higher education. Some of these resources are tools that I've just kind of used in my toolkit. And also some of them were linked within the presentation. But I have the student Wakelet. As I mentioned, my university utilizes Blackboard as a learning management system. So I have some Blackboard resources, some Google sites. So lots of different, kind of a variety of different resources. One of my favorite books is Anti-Racism in UDL. It does have a K through 12 lens, but so much of the strategies and practices are also applicable to higher education. And the final thing I want to kind of pull out in my waning minutes is I talked about my syllabi and how I kind of have different statements in there. And so I have a copy of a sample syllabus. Please feel free to kind of share information if any of this language is helpful to you as you're going through and integrating universal design. So I just kind of, this talks about like time management, communication, really kind of how I use some of the language within my syllabus to promote kind of consistency, minimize threats and distractions, and create that positive learning, inclusive environment. And I want to thank you all so much. So here is kind of as I end, I put my Wakelet profile there as well. I have lots of different categories and information there. So please feel free to kind of access those resources. I put my Instagram too. That's mainly assistive technology, but my email information, if anyone has any questions or feedback to then share tools or strategies that you've utilized, I would welcome it because I feel like it's always just, we just get better when we all work together. Yeah, so I'm here if there's any questions, but I do think the recorded webinar will be sent afterwards.
Yes. Thank you again, Lauren. That was a really great presentation. You gave us a lot of wonderful information. And yes, we will be sending out a link once the recording is available to all the participants. Okay. Thank you again.
Perfect.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.